This video's sponsor is Ren. Learn how you can make a difference with Ren later on in the video. Hi, I'm Robert Tolpe, and today we're talking about Wednesday, the hit Netflix series that has broken the internet with its soaring popularity. While the show was entertaining, I couldn't help but notice some decisions that made me raise my eyebrow on more than one occasion while watching it. So let's talk about that, shall we? And while I assume everyone has watched the show already, I have to warn you that there are some spoilers ahead. Wednesday is yet another show about high schoolers doing high schooler things in high school, except the students in this show are no ordinary students. They're outcasts who go to a special academy called Nevermore. Wednesday Addams and her outcast peers must learn to live in a world filled with normies, the word the show uses to identify regular humans with no supernatural abilities. While this not like other kids framing for a teen series is not unusual, the use of the word normie to describe regular people is. Usually we get a made-up word like muggle or something like that to label ordinary people in these kinds of fictional worlds. But normie is very much a real word, although you probably don't use it much unless you're a far-right teen on a message board filled with radical conservatives, in which case normie is likely part of your day-to-day vocabulary. On far-right meme pages, normie is the word used to describe people who haven't been radicalized yet. But why would Netflix writers use such a politically charged word to serve a mundane purpose in their TV show? I imagine the word just worked in the script. It fit into their world so perfectly that they didn't give it a second thought. And they never stopped to question why the word would suit a show like Wednesday. I don't think they ever connected the dots between the story of Wednesday Addams, a homicidal loner with antisocial tendencies, to the stories of homicidal antisocial loners in the real world. Wednesday arrives at Nevermore because she really doesn't fit into her old high school. She was a loner, and members of her family were bullied by the popular kids there. If you didn't notice, that kind of fits the stereotypical profile of a student who might be a threat to other students. And this is stereotypically speaking. But Wednesday isn't like that. She wouldn't bring something she's not supposed to school to take revenge on the... Oh wait, she did. The campiness of using the piranhas in this situation kind of obscures the seriousness of it. I doubt this scene would be very funny if she used anything else to get revenge on those students. Instead of being, thrown in jail, Wednesday Addams is whisked away to a special school for outcasts like herself. Nevermore Academy is a fanciful place where sirens, werewolves, and other mythical beings join together to learn in harmony. But while it goes deep into the family lives of these supernatural identities, it doesn't really mention the characters' races or ethnicities at all. Instead, the writers use this cheesy outcast normie dynamic as a proxy for real-life social issues. The outcasts have been historically oppressed by normies in the town of Jericho, where the story takes place. This history of oppression is a central conflict of the series, where Wednesday has to cope with the town's dark past, when pilgrims sought to eradicate all the outcasts in the colonies. The show makes misguided references to the Salem witch trials, whose perpetrators weren't exactly pilgrims. It was later on in history, and no one was burned at the stake in the colonies. That didn't happen. But this is a fictional TV show. I don't want to pick apart historical inaccuracies all day. But I do have issues with how they essentially rewrite history. Indigenous people probably face the most mistreatment at the hands of the colonists in North America. But despite this being a central part of that time period in history, this really isn't addressed. Some have pointed out that the show does recognize contemporary oppression of Indigenous people. So I definitely feel in the process of creating this whole oppression background for the outcasts, they erased the actual story of how Native Americans were oppressed by colonists here in North America. I do like that they made the villain of the story a pilgrim, however, because pilgrims are so idolized thoroughly in American history. I feel like it's about time that we have a comically evil portrayal of a pilgrim. Before I continue the video, I'd like to talk about my sponsor, Ren. Ren is a website where you can make a difference in the climate crisis by offsetting the emissions you generate. By answering a few simple questions, Ren calculates your carbon footprint and gives you tips on how to reduce it. Because there's no way to cut down your carbon footprint to zero on your own, Wren helps you fund a diverse mix of carbon reduction products like tree planting, mineral weathering, and rainforest protection. When you sign up to make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint, you'll receive monthly updates from the projects you support. Wren tells you what your money is spent on, with photos and details of every tree planted, every acre reforested, and every ton of carbon offset. One of the coolest projects they're working on now is adding crushed basalt into forest land in Scotland. By speeding up Earth's natural carbon cycle, they can sequester carbon there for millions of years. It'll take a lot to fight the climate crisis, and you can learn more about how you can help by visiting Wren.co. I encourage you to offset your carbon footprint with Wren. The first 100 people who sign up using the link in the description will have 10 extra trees planted in their name. Back to what I was saying, the show rewrites history to establish that the real oppressed people in this universe are the outcasts, apparently. Outcasts including Wednesday. But beyond evil undead pilgrims and bigoted families seeking to eradicate outcasts, they don't seem to be the most downtrodden group of people. Socioeconomically speaking, they go to a giant, well-funded private school, and Wednesday lives in a mansion. Sure, many of the students do face prejudice from the people in Jericho, but that may be because they have a tendency to vandalize property and one of them might be eating people for breakfast? I don't know. Look, I don't want to invalidate the fictional oppression of outcasts, but the show's idea of what oppression is a very 5th grade level understanding of it. People in this world are either blatantly evil bigots or they're completely colorblind, with very little in between, and it's individuals in the show that are framed as being the issue, the reason why the outcasts are oppressed, and not some kind of system. The series villainizes a few bad apples that are framed as the root of all the problems in the town, in a way that makes things easy to solve and wrap up at the end of the series, you know? Just vanquish the bad people and your problems are gone. As for the oppression Wednesday Addams personally faces, she is ostracized by her normie peers, but not necessarily because she's an outcast. It's probably because she's kind of a sociopath. She will casually try to harm you, ignore your feelings, and use you. And I don't believe people distancing themselves from her is necessarily a form of prejudice. To offset Wednesday's questionable character traits, they make her seem rather socially conscious and progressive in a pessimistic sort of way. She seems to understand misogyny and the oppression of indigenous people, and is overall well-educated and intelligent. Part of the success of every series is the likability of its protagonists, and the writers of the show Wednesday certainly try to make Wednesday as likable as possible. But should we like Wednesday? Maybe not, but we do root for her when we're watching the show, even when her actions should probably be condemned. As some have said, I feel like the glamorous teen show vibe that Netflix was trying to adapt the Addams Family into makes it really hard for the character Wednesday to exist in the same way she did in the original show. While Wednesday is still herself, the show just isn't wacky enough to contain her. I guess the order from the Netflix executives was to take no creative risks at all, especially when developing her surroundings. The main setting of the show, Nevermore, a school for outcasts that you're supposed to go to if you don't fit in with the normies, should be wacky as all get up, but everything about it is no different from a usual private school. As YouTuber Mina Lee points out, half of the school's activities, for instance, are just regular school activities with a gothic aesthetic sprinkled over it. Like the episode with the Poe Cup, which is just a relay race with an Edgar Allan Poe theme. As for the students themselves, besides having special abilities, there's nothing really unusual about them. Besides Wednesday, she's supposed to go there because she is supposed to fit in more there. She is supposed to belong there. But she doesn't fit in there any more than she did in her other school. She's an outcast even among outcasts, so what's the point of her being there? Her transition to Nevermore is just a change in scenery as opposed to an important part of the plot. I feel it was simply more convenient for the show to limit Wednesday's contact with the real world, as the nature of the show would require them to do a lot of explaining about how she avoids getting in legal trouble for her behavior. The need to explain her behavior is such a limiting factor even in the show's more permissive surroundings. Nothing can just be a quick gag. If she releases 2 bags of piranhas into the swimming pool at her high school, there has to be a motive for it, and more importantly, it has to be explained why this was the correct course of action that Wednesday should have taken, and why we should support her in doing so. Perhaps her behavior is simply because she's a troubled teen, and something deep within her psyche compelled her to do it. Don't worry, some court-ordered therapy sessions will solve that. We don't have a piranha control crisis in this country. We have a mental health crisis, remember? I feel like choices were made when incorporating Dr. Kimbot in the show. This had the potential to either medicalize Wednesday's behavior, explaining away her actions, which are just supposed to be a simple dark joke, with a long list of diagnoses. That would be lame and problematic. So instead, the show demonstrates that Wednesday doesn't actually need therapy somehow, and she's special in her own magical way, which I feel is somehow worse. There is a danger in having an effective therapist in a TV show, promising to cure your main character of the qualities that make them funny and unique, but the way the show approaches the topic of mental health care is not ideal. Though the show has many problems and is overhyped, it was fun to watch and definitely wasn't bad, but it certainly wasn't stellar either. And I don't know if I read too much into it, but the troubled teen subtext with the dark elements of the show, when removed from the campy environment of the original show and the comics, make for a disjointed viewing experience. Anyways, I'm Robert Tolpe, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Maybe even check out my sponsor, Ren, and I hope you have a good week. Bye-bye.